World events have once again interceded to fuck with our program and my life and schedule due to events currently unfolding in the Middle East. We will not be discussing the new season of Tulsa King, unfortunately. So I apologize for that. So we're gonna have to talk about some real shit going down. Well, Tulsa King will just have to wait.
Here's how I think you should have done that. Tulsa King on the back burner, but Tulpa King on the rise? Are Israelis making tulpas of themselves?
So, of course, today we got to be talking about.
I just think it would have worked.
Today, obviously, we were talking about Israel, Lebanon, Iran. And to do so, we are joined, of course, by our good friend, brother Séamus. It's Séamus Malekafzali, back again, senior for Chapo, Lebanon and Middle East correspondent. Séamus Malekafzali. Séamus, welcome back to the show.
Always a pleasure to be back on.
I'd like to begin with the ballistic missile attack that Iran launched against Israel earlier this week. And Séamus, I want to start with this because it's this is Iran's, what I would describe as a totally proportionate and reasonable response to the assassination of Hanea in their own country. They launched, according to Iran, something like 180 ballistic missiles at a number of Israeli Air Force bases. And I guess I'd like to begin because in trying to assess what actually took place, there's quite a bit of competing information about exactly what happened in this missile attack, because Iran is claiming that most of their missiles that they fired of their hypersonic Fatah variety missile, which they have not used thus far in this war, Iran has claimed that something like 90% of them hit their targets. Israel is claiming the exact opposite. So, Séamus, as best you understand, what can we tell about the relative, strategic success or failure of this missile attack on Israeli Air Force bases?
Well, there are two different ways to measure strategic success. One is the Israeli one during this current war, and one is the current Iranian one. The current Iranian one, as it is with the rest of the acts of resistance, is to, show the ability to overcome Israel's defenses, to show its resolve, to show its abilities, to indicate that if there are more moves against Iranian territory in the future, that the next strikes will be against more targets that Israel will not be able to shoot down. According to Israel, however, success is measured by whether or not Tel Aviv is destroyed, or whether or not thousands upon thousands of civilians are killed, which is how they measure success in Gaza and in Lebanon.
Yeah, I noticed that Elon Levy, the world's only freelance spokesman, was bragging about this and saying, you didn't even kill any civilians, which is darkly hilarious. It's basically like if they put out a press release, it's like, you haven't even molested any of your prisoners of war.
And I'm sorry, this is being echoed by National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, who said that there were no deaths reported in Israel. Quote, in short, based on what we know at this point, this attack appears to have been defeated and ineffective. And look, we know that some of those missiles definitely hit Israel. I mean, there's video of it. There's video of missiles landing in Israel. And in terms of I've heard, again, it's very hard to understand conflicting reports about what damage this missile attack may have done at the Air Force bases that they were targeting. I've heard some reports that they may have taken out half of Israel's F-35 fleet. I mean, but it's very hard to tell because Israel is obviously not going to cough up any information about what this attack may or may not have accomplished. But I mean, what are the likelihood that the Iron Dome was able to intercept something as they're claiming 90% of the ballistic missiles that were fired?
It's not the Iron Dome is not the anti-ballistic missile system.
Oh,
David
okay.
Sling is the anti-ballistic missile system. Iron Dome is more for just rockets that follow a ballistic trajectory and don't cross the Kármán line, much smaller projectiles.
In either case, David Sling, Iron Dome, virtually none of these missiles seem to have been shot down. What Will is describing with the videos of these missiles that were impacting Israel, it really kind of undersells it. There is one video, I think near Nevatim Air Base in the Negev Desert, where these missiles are falling and clearly making impact one after the other every single second. Um, this was a massive security failure by the state of Israel. Back in April, you know, Israel could maybe portray that it was able to withstand Iran's attack because a lot of the projectiles that were fired were slow moving drones, and the amount of ballistic missiles was far smaller. But here, you absolutely cannot make that argument. To make that argument, to assess that it was thwarted, or the new line of argumentation that is from the Pentagon about an hour ago was that the main target was civilians and they hit military bases, I guess by mistake. Like some of them, it was a really odd line of argument.
Yeah. Wow.
Incredible. I wanted to ask you, like unfortunately, like we probably won't really know like the totality of the damage and the true efficacy for another like 20-30 years. I think it wasn't until 2018 Israel released what Iraq's Scud missiles actually hit inside of Israel. They played all of that very close to the chest, but it was absolutely fucking remarkable. And you never really get to see like short range ballistic missiles deployed in those kinds of numbers. They were reaching like just absurd reentry speeds. Some people said that they might have been like Mach 18, Mach 19 by the time they re-entered. But I was wondering, you mentioned it in passing, the more limited strike with like subsonics and loitering munitions and drones in spring that was largely intercepted, and clearly the intention wasn't the same as this one. I've seen a few people speculate on this, but I don't know if I agree with it, that some people think that attack in spring was a feint to make Israelis believe that was the true extent of Iranian strike capabilities.
I don't think so. I think in all of these cases, the intent is to show that like, the language that President Pezeshkian used with this attack was to show that this was only like a corner of our capabilities. The point is to show that like we can do this now very cheaply, very effectively, and we can increase this without any sweat off our backs. While that specific retaliation measure might be complete for the embassy bombing, for the embassy strike back in April, that's not the be-all, end-all of the war. New lines of engagement are being drawn here. And even if and we can get into this if you have questions about this, the new equation where every single assassination, every single new violation of Iran's interests is violated, it'll be immediately met with the same kind of response. Even if that wasn't the case, clearly we're in a different stage now, where it's no longer all the emphasis on strategic patience, and we'll take this as with a restrained capability. Things are different now.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were taking note of like the kind of unprecedented restraint, not unprecedented for Iran, but really unprecedented in recent history for any state being treated this way, shown by Iran in the last year. And a lot of us were wondering, well, like what would it actually take for them to, give Israel a black eye? Well, I guess we found out.
Yeah. With an April, you cross over a pretty significant line. You hit the embassy. You destroy an embassy complex, which is technically the territory of another country. So that gives you the reasoning. And here, okay, you hit Hania in Tehran. You get away with that for about 2 months as Iran, restrains itself, is told that you need to wait for ceasefire negotiations. But then you kill Nasrallah, and then you, in addition, kill a very high-ranking brigadier general in the IRGC in that same attack. There's only so much, like, strategic patience eventually runs out. And it runs out when you kill the leader of Hezbollah, when you kill the leader of an important Iranian ally.
You also noted that, like, this is not the apex of Iran's like surface-to-surface capabilities, and I did see that noted that right as things were hitting, they actually have like ballistics that are even faster than what they deployed this time, and presumably would have more success not being intercepted by David's sling and have more destructive capability. It's kind of fucking impossible to get inside anyone's head, much less someone who clearly doesn't have like any type of plan or anything, like Israel does not appear to. But do you think this has caused any pause amongst at least the Israeli military?
Oh, that's a good question. The thing that I've been mulling over is like, did this attack, however effective it may have been, did it come too late?
Yeah.
In terms of the fact that the original plan, as I think I discussed on the last time I was on here, the plan that they were mulling was a combined attack by the resistance axis, one that would show the ability of these countries to overcome Israel's defenses. This would be that kind of attack, what you would have seen maybe back in August. But now that it has happened after Nasrallah's death, after the invasion of southern Lebanon has begun, is that deterrent capability that Iran wanted to recreate, is it just finished? Because now Israel has been given even more of a blank check, even more impunity than it had back in July, where there literally seem to be no guardrails about what America is willing to do. I mean, just today, I mean, if you were thinking about oil prices, if you're thinking about how much damage you would do, Biden comes out today and journalists ask him about like oil prices and if they're thinking about striking oil facilities in Iran, and he's like, "Yeah, we're discussing it."
Yeah,
Just
no,
move on with it.
I have that here.
Oh my God.
I have that here.
There's no, yeah.
Okay, I think this is from the Financial Times. Oil soared to its highest level in more than a month on Thursday as traders speculated that Israel could engage in retaliatory strikes against Iran's oil industry. West Texas Intermediate climbed as much as 5.5% to trade at $74 a barrel after U.S. President Joe Biden told reporters that such a move was under discussion. Asked whether the U.S. would support Israel striking Iran's oil facilities, Biden said, "We're in discussion of that." Although in his truncated comments, the U.S. president went on to say, "I think that would be a little anyway."
Oh, okay, good to know.
we could entirely destroy the oil market right before my vice president needs to be reelected, driving up gas prices through the roof. No, it's okay. No, but it's this thing, like, you may have believed even 2 months ago or even a month ago that there might be things that America does not want you to do. Even still, throughout all of this, there might be still things that they don't want you to do. But lately, you get the permission to destroy entire apartment buildings in order to kill the leader of Hezbollah, and you get not even so much as a condemnation, you get just like a stamp of approval from Biden once you do that, once you kill 300 some people. Like, why would you ever believe that anything could ever hurt you? If you strike Iran and Iran strikes you back, then you've got America backing you up every step of the way. So
yeah. I mean, just in like the grand scheme of things, it does appear like Israel has no like plan. Like no matter how many people they kill, and they're killing just a horrifying amount and committing horrifying acts against civilian populations, but just in their grand execution of this, how does it ultimately play out? It does kind of appear to me that they don't really know what they're going to do next. And I do kind of think part of that is they anticipated that the Biden administration would behave like most other previous US administrations, in that, you know, they get a very, very broad reign. They get to do a lot of horrible shit, but eventually you get reined in. And that is your off ramp. You get to say, "Oh, we would march all the way to Beirut, but America stopped us." Mm-hmm. I think they've been kind of surprised at how little the Biden administration has done, which is to say they haven't done anything. They haven't given them any type of off ramp. So they're just kind of like caught out continuing to do this. And I'm not saying that like this is somehow against their will or not completely their fault. It entirely is, and it is a consequence of a nation with rabies. But it does seem like they counted on there being some kind of like basically their friend holding them back and them going, "Oh, you're fucking lucky."
Oh yeah. No, all I would say is that I think the dog catching the car sort of analogy is pretty apt here. Mm-hmm. They have like a grand plan, as it were. to reshape the Middle East in Israel's image. Talking about, like, at the UN, and talking about there's a plan for the blessing,
Yeah.
and then there's the curse. The idea that the entire Middle East could theoretically be the blessing if they all abandoned their opposition to Israel. And they roughly know how they would do it. You would affect regime change, and some sort of regime change in Lebanon, some sort of regime change in Syria if you wanted to. But when it comes to specifics, now you are totally rummaging around in the dark, and you have to kind of feel everything out. Like, what can we do? What can we suddenly be able to do now? And that leads you into these wild and crazy avenues that are now being suggested in the Israeli media for the Israeli government to take up, talking about making the entirety of northern Gaza into a military zone where nobody is allowed to live. There are pundits right now advocating that Israel should start striking in Iraq now, start striking Iraqi militias that are firing drones at Israel. Like, everybody's trying to figure out what's, like, even within this realm of impunity, what is next? What can we be able to do? Are there things that we couldn't even conceive of that we weren't able to do, and now we have to figure out plans for that? And that is an extraordinarily dangerous thing for a state to be enabled to do. And they're being given billions and billions of dollars with no strings attached by the Biden administration.
And we talked about hitting Iran's oil facilities. Whether obviously that would spike the price of crude, it would crash the global economy. But Séamus, Iran has stated that if Israel or the United States retaliates against any of its domestic oil production, that they will retaliate by hitting the domestic oil production of Saudi Arabia, Azerbaijan, and like several. I mean, and once that happens, you're off to the fucking races at that point. But I mean, yeah, this is a real powder keg. It doesn't bear thinking too hard about like how quickly this can become something that is, something that people, we have an idea of what it might look like, but until it happens, most people don't want to countenance the idea of what that might look like. No, I guess I just wanted to think, like, outside the strategic success or failure of this missile attack, I guess what I was thinking is like more just like symbolically, like when you see Israel get attacked, when someone punches them back and it hits them back hard, or however hard they may or may not have achieved. I think like a feeling that I have, and I would imagine most of the people around the world have, is like fucking finally, right? And it's just like this idea that like you for a year now, I've woken up every day to see like another account of Israel killing just unrestrained number of people in Gaza and now in Lebanon. And I think like for most of the people in the world who are, in countries that are far away from where this is happening and whose governments may condemn it, they may support it. But for the people of the world, I think for it just to see Iran or the Houthis or anyone actually fight back against Israel, I think they're like relieving a sense of shame. They're sort of like taking it upon themselves to sort of like do something to relieve the for some small period of time, relieve the sense of shame that everyone in the world feels for allowing this to occur, and that the knowing that we're not doing anything really to stop it or fight back, and that like Iran is like probably the largest regional actor who is most capable of actually fighting back. And what that will look like, I don't know, but how do you feel about the way in which, like, symbolically, what Israel getting their nose bloodied, what that really means?
No, I mean, in Iran, I will temper this by saying that there are a lot of people who were obviously panicked by this development. I mean, it's a ballistic missile attack against Israel, a country that absolutely has the capability to strike back at Iran. People were worried. People were running the gas stations. But there are also crowds of people who were celebrating based on this very idea, the idea that they were finally given a bloody nose after all of this, and that it wasn't just purely symbolic. They hit air bases. They punched holes in hangars. There's damage that the Israeli army is trying to hide. But I will say, just like, regardless of all this discussion about military effectiveness, how you measure that, all I will point to is the videos that emerged out of places like Khan Yunis, out of places like the Jabalia refugee camp, places in Gaza that have been absolutely decimated by the Israeli military and what they've done. and you see the cheering, you see the applause, you hear the hooting and the whistling, and you see people like reporters from Al Jazeera who have seen nothing but absolute terror for the past almost whole year now. And they say this is the first time in a year that we've seen people happy. That is how I measure the success of this. What does it do? Like, there was something that I think one of the Houthi spokespeople, Mohammed al-Bukhaiti, said. I want to say back in like July when they sent a drone to Tel Aviv. Like, we are not measuring the success of this by specifically like how militarily effective it is. Like are we physically able to establish a deterrence? Like, this is a battle of morality. Whether it's effective or not, we still have to do it because of how important this is about in regards to Palestine. That is how I would measure this.
Yeah, watching especially videos of like kids who are probably like 18, 19 have not really known a life but this, a life under this boot on their neck. Little kids, just people who have been living in hell. And for them to like finally get some satisfaction out of this. I mean, it was like if you could watch the entire Dachau reprisals. It was kind of stunning to watch. But I will say, for pure military strategic success, I have an informal system for figuring out how successful an attack against Israel is or isn't. And you measure it by the posts of online Hasbris. If they're saying things like, this is not normal, and like, this is our life, yeah, they hit something.
Yeah,
when they start acting like they were just having a day at the park and someone launched a missile at them, unbidden, that's when you know something happened.
Oh yeah, there was that one post by the official government account by Israel saying, yeah, like, this is not normal, and then saying like, all of these missiles are meant to kill. It's like, what you guy? That is you. Like, what have you guys been doing this whole time? What? I don't get it. All right.
And then, like, when Israel actually does get punched and punched hard, then of course in the last couple of days we've seen a return of the concept of international law and the crime of aggression, and also, the Mossad headquarters is in a heavily civilian area. How dare they attack it? It blinkers the imagination.
No, and there was also, in addition to that, which is, I think I know the CNN bit you're referring to with Jim Scudio, which is, all right, spell it out, whatever. But there were also, when they questioned this to Matthew Miller, our favorite smirking spokesman.
Cunt chocula.
They questioned, like, he was saying this was unprovoked. Obviously, he said it was unprovoked. And when somebody brought up the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, he said, "Oh, that happened weeks ago."
Oh, that's old shit. Don't bring it up.
Yeah, why are you bringing up old shit?
It only happened weeks ago.
Like, October 7th has been the justification for all of this, and that happened almost a year ago. And there were also Congress people who were talking about how great Nasrallah being killed was because that was justice for the Marines who were killed back in 1988. Like, how are we measuring this? Where suddenly there's a time scale where if you go over it, it's like, you know what? Bygones, bygones. That's not how it fucking works. That's never how it's worked. You can't even say this with a straight face because you immediately, like, dog, they bombed Tehran. Did you think that this was going to, like, go over well with people?
This is the insane standard where, like, Israel can assassinate someone in Iran, attack their consulate in a foreign country, and then if Iran responds militarily in any way, as any other country would, as we're told over and over again when it comes to Israel's self-defense, quote unquote, and then they do it, and they're like, oh, well, that's a war crime. That this is terror. This is aggression. These missiles are intended to kill people. They're trying to kill people in a war. That this is not normal. This is not okay. And it's just like, or when I hear accounts are like, every Israeli right now are just sheltering in a, they're cowering in a bomb shelter. This is not normal. It's just sort of like, what do you think you've been doing in more or less in front of the entire world for the last year? And like, again, whether it's now a possibility of a war with Iran, we'll talk in a second. Israel is invading Lebanon at this moment. The It bears stating that the only reason all of this is happening is because the United States is allowing our client state and ally to pursue unrestrained war against a captive civilian population. Like, and I like in the U.S. like the U.S. state planners, they keep saying that like, oh, like we need to separate these conflicts, or just like we need to like drive a wedge between Gaza and all these other wars we're fighting. But like it's only happening because they did what they're doing to Gaza in the first place. And like the people like Nasrallah before he was assassinated are like, they've made it pretty clear that like, no, like Gaza is the issue. Like that's why we're launching rockets into northern Israel, is because of what you're doing in Gaza. And like, and there are some accounts that like that Nasrallah was assassinated because of his stance on the ceasefire.
Not for nothing, the Israeli strike that killed Hananea, the assassination of Hananea, that was not their first strike inside of Iran, where they killed someone who, previous assumptions would dictate that maybe they don't fucking go inside the country to assassinate if they don't want this to happen. You don't you have to go back like 3 or 4 years to find that instance of them sending that it was like an automotive drone that had
you're talking about Fakhrizadeh. Yeah, no, it was
yes.
the turret thing. It was weird.
Yeah, if it's okay for someone else to kill Nasrallah because of the attack on the Marines in '83, then where does that leave something that happened in fucking 2020?
No, the only people who are allowed to, abide by international law, to invoke international law, are the United States. When somebody else talks about their responsibility to protect the backbone of humanitarian intervention throughout, since Kosovo, suddenly it's about unprovoked war. Suddenly it's about, oh, you're blowing up the entire region. Well, dog, people would say, Hezbollah would say, the Houthi would say, well, we're trying to abide by the conventions that you guys yourselves written, that you wrote it. You conjured up this entire thing. We're trying to follow it. And now you've gotten to this position in which nobody in the Middle East believes anything that the State Department has to say, that the United States has to say. There is a generational break in the perception of the United States and the people of the Middle East, far greater than existed after the Iraq War, I think. I don't even know a time in which this could be washed off.
Yeah, there obviously is like no one has like a monopoly on horrible acts committed by the US or its allies in the Middle East. But just as far as like, can you believe anything that this administration or this government says? Like, there is no even attempt at any type of propriety. I mean, which is, aren't these the norms, people? Aren't these the people that love fucking norms? Wasn't that what the 2020 election was entirely about? Norms?
No, they've abandoned. I mean, this is a larger domestic politics thing, but every single norm that we were obsessed with protecting back in like 2016, 2020, that's all gone out the fucking window. Everything has to immediately lurch right. All that stuff about immigration is out the window. Nobody gives a shit about that anymore. Now they're praising Biden and Kamala Harris for enforcing the tightest border security that's ever existed. No, it's there is a silent acknowledgement here that norms can no longer be afforded to exist. Norms got us into a very bad position. We're now out on our asses trying to defend ourselves. Now we have to continuously obfuscate. Now we have to, I guess, fall back on the barest of bones of international law justifications to get where we are.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the norm, I guess, here is that it is only people who attack Israel that are escalating this conflict. Like that
still holds.
And like that's the thing, it's like Israel can blow up every cell phone and pager in Lebanon. It can level a housing block full of hundreds of people to kill one guy. None of those are that's actually escalation to de-escalate. But when Iran fires a volley of ballistic missiles, they're escalating this conflict. Hezbollah is escalating this conflict by killing the Israeli soldiers that are invading their country.
No, everybody complained about the fact that, people were always saying, like, this all started on October 7th. And then people had to remind them that this occupation of the Gaza Strip had been going on for decades at this point. But now you see this whole thing where history now starts on September 30th, where these ballistic missiles came out of the sky while Israel was doing its own counterterrorism operations in Lebanon and Gaza. Or really, that's not even mentioned too much. So now this is entirely unprovoked. This unchecked aggression from Iran, the country that desires the complete annihilation of the Jewish people, the only Jewish state in the entire world. And this immense evil needs to be countered. The Iranian people, the noble Iranian people, as Netanyahu had said in that one message in English, they need to be freed. Iran will be free much sooner than many people think. And Israel needs to be supported in this measure. The entire free world needs to be behind them. Like, that norm still remains, but it's become Flanderized almost. Like, there used to be, people, even by the George Bush administration, there used to be, parameters that Israel was not supposed to get out of. They couldn't kill too many civilians in the operations that they would do. They had to at least say that they were going with some sort of two-state solution, but otherwise they can do mostly what they wanted. Now, supporting Israel has become this completely all-encompassing form that overcomes and just swallows up every other thing that the United States is involved with. Nothing can come above that, not laws, not courts, no international standards of any kind. If it interferes with that, then the whole thing comes apart. And it's become like this linchpin of the entire international order.